I'm very happy to welcome Michael Lazik of Templafy as our guest. He's Sales Director of Germany, Austria, Switzerland there. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So just a quick heads up, Templafy is a startup and has raised a total of, at least as far as I could see, $61 million and has its headquarters in Copenhagen, Denmark. Is this more or less correct?
That's correct. That's a very brief summary of what we are, but the facts are correct. We actually are in the next funding round right now, so there will be more to come. Watch this space, but you're right, as of today.
As of today, yeah, but that's then you do a good job in sales, so that's good to hear. So I've got some intro questions, like 4 or 5, and my ask is to please give a brief answer. It's more to get to know you and your company so that everybody knows for the following answers, like how they can basically judge them and use them.
Absolutely.
So tell me about Templafy. What are you doing, or what is the company doing?
So, all right, so I already mentioned we're a Danish scale-up actually, so we have around 350 employees now, but I guess we touch this later. We sell a content enablement platform to enterprise customers around the globe. Yeah, if you look into business of today, then all of them have some kind of business enablement tech stack for CRM, for productivity, collaboration, communication, sales enablement, and so forth. And these platforms typically hold content islands, and our job is to connect those content islands, for example, to create a proposal generation process that's smooth and frictionless for the users. So we are content enablers in the best given shape, and we do this as software as a service, so a really scalable enterprise-grade architecture. And the main purpose of what we're doing is finally to increase productivity, efficiency, and compliance for our customers. And yeah, in the current situation, SaaS also allows us to cover every kind of hybrid workplace model, enable companies to bring their workforce into hybrid working models and remote situations, which, yeah, definitely also created a boost to our business in the last 18 months, I would say.
Very good. What's your job at Templafy?
I think sales director is an accurate description of what I'm doing. So I'm responsible to scale the DACH sales organization. I'm mainly busy with recruiting, onboarding talent. I'm coaching for performance. I support my team in complex pitches with larger customers, key customers. I work on strategic initiatives when we think about sales process, go-to-market strategies and stuff like that. And of course, I deliver results. I would say that's it in a nutshell.
Can you give us a proxy of the size and growth of Templafy? You already said it was, what was it, 300 something employees?
350 is the current count. We aim at more than 500 by the end of the year. So we continue to grow rapidly. I just explained, I hire a lot, I recruit a lot, I interview a lot. And by the end of 2020, we had about 650 enterprise customers with approximately 2.8 million users, and our ARR was in the region of 29-30 million USD.
Okay, very good. How many quota-carrying reps do you actually have right now in your team?
Right now, it's 6, and I have 10 BDRs supporting them. So quite sizable force for a rather young business as we are.
Okay, very good. So now let's dive into the meat of the questions, and you can take more time to answer them, of course. In your opinion, what drives the success of a SaaS product?
So, I mean, in the enterprise market, SaaS business live and thrive actually from establishing long-lasting relationships with their customers. Yeah, because if you look at a scale-up with the high customer acquisition cost and the initial investment into product and hosting facilities whatsoever, then you need 2 to 3 years to break even with a given customer. Yeah, so your retention has to be higher. So, and you can only achieve this if your relationship with the customers build on trust and honesty, and you really need to solve a problem for your customer and provide business value and impact in order to be worth that long-lasting relationship. Yeah, so in my world, you really need to understand your customers' problems potentially better than themselves and come up with a really targeted solution that delivers a tangible impact. Yeah? And that's I would say that for me, the heart of SaaS. And then the other thing, if we talk about enterprise SaaS sales, what I've seen, what distinguishes successful sales orgs and reps from the less successful is basically that you need to understand that you always sell to a buying team, not just an individual buyer. And we're talking about enterprise sales, B2B, and there's for sure somewhere in the process, there's one economic buyer, but there's also a bunch of completely different stakeholders that you need to be aware of and where you need to understand their needs and drivers and have to satisfy them in order to have a successful sale, which then make you a successful SaaS business, right? So you need to continuously evaluate what's the buying team, who are the gatekeepers, who are the influencers, who are the decision makers, who's the final economic buyer, who holds the budget, and develop your value proposition for each of those members of the buying team accordingly. Yeah? And this is something where I also see difference between successful and less successful organizations. Yeah, in my career, I hope I can call it a career, I've met a lot of sales reps, junior sales reps, eager, ambitious, that focus too much on selling functionality, and they focus on those business goals that have been articulated in an RFP, in a request, in an initial conversation, in the first discovery with the buyer, and then they just answer to those business goals that have been articulated. Yeah, but as we still sell to people, people sell to people, even in our business, even if we talk B2B all the time, it's not like an AI talking to a procurement robot, it's still the sales rep talking to the decision maker, the influencer, the user on the customer side. There's always an element of personal goals involved. Yeah, and these personal goals, these are not really communicated goals, but they are relevant for the decision making of each individual in that team. And if you really have an answer to that inherent question of what's in for me from all of your stakeholders, then you're in a much better position to actually land that deal. Yeah. For example, just give you one or two examples. If you talk to a project manager over the course of your engagement with that prospect, yeah, then the likelihood that that person is far more interested in having a successful, smooth, and potentially not too stressful project and use this as a step on their career ladder. If you then discuss this in terms of, hey, we've already done this for a client XYZ with very similar requirements or challenges, and we have successfully delivered, and that project manager, I can connect you with that person is now head of project management or runs the project office in that business, that might interest this particular contact much more than a sophisticated range of functionalities that might wow a more technical buyer. Yeah, so it's really, really important if you want to establish long-lasting relationships and first of all win, to understand not only the business goals, but also the personal goals of the involved stakeholders here. Yeah. Another case that we come across quite often, at least in Templafy, is we replace a lot of legacy systems. Yeah, so there are businesses that have already understood that in the way, or in, let's say, in document automation, template management, as we do it in content enablement, there's a value, and they have worked with homegrown solutions. They have worked with smaller providers that build simple tools for the same purpose, and they come eventually to a point where they say we have to replace this. Yeah, but typically in that organization, you find one or two people who are the subject matter experts for that incumbent solution, and then you need to be aware that this person will typically be part of an evaluation team when it comes to finding a new solution. So don't expect too much praise and love from that person because you take away the expert status. Yeah, but think about, how can I get this guy, this girl into my camp? How can I convince them that they will become a subject matter expert for the new platform, for Templafy or whatever we just sell? In no time, we'll get back into that expert status. Only then they will support you, because only then you pay into their personal goals. They might not care so much about functionality, cost, or whatsoever you put forward as an argumentation. So be aware that there's a huge and wide range of personal goals that always impact the sales process. And even if it's very difficult to discover those personal goals, because people will not talk freely about this, at least not in our culture. Yeah, in the US, it's a bit easier, a bit open. You have much opener conversations there, but here people are a bit reluctant to share their most inner thoughts. There's still a lot of indications that you can use to derive those personal goals, and it's definitely worth to do it, because imagine a situation where you are head to head with a competitor. You haven't really managed to establish any competitive advantage. Yeah, and then what happens? Either you talk price, and you just drop your pants until you're cheap enough to be bought, but then you are already in a very bad position to start a relationship, or you manage to pay more into the personal goals and differentiate on that level. I'd rather go that route and keep my prices. Yeah, I'd rather sell higher, but convince more buyers than just drop my pants and make it cheap. By twice, you know that, right?
Absolutely. So absolutely.
I hope that was comprehensive and not too long.
Yeah, I have some follow-up questions there, and that's super interesting. How do you do that in practice when you like, what kind of approach do you use to win new clients? Is it more like use like an account-based marketing approach where you basically select certain companies that you want to win? Or is it more like you go into different segments of potential buyers and just do a land and expand where you say, okay, I try the product managers, I try some other kind of stakeholders within a company, and wherever I'm gonna land, I'm trying to convince that person and then gonna try to like convince the other stakeholders in that company. What do you do in practice?
A little bit of everything and nothing exactly like that. So that is due to the nature of Templafy. So we have one advantage, which is we have multiple use cases that we can satisfy in most organizations on the planet. I would say exclude agricultural businesses and mining businesses, but every business that in a way has documents as part of their value chain has a certain what we call document heaviness, so needs document to convince customers to produce business outcomes and so forth, is first of all a target customer for us. If that goes along with a certain size of the business, depending on the vertical, they are in our soft spot or hotspot, if you will. And what we then try to do is we try to identify different stakeholders for the various use cases we have. And then we try to ideally do something that we call the horizontal land. So we try to implement one of our solutions, one of our use cases that can cover the entirety of the organization. A simple one would be email signature, for example. It doesn't make sense to implement an email signature management for a fraction of your users, then there's no benefit in that. Yeah? Or another case could be, and this is typically something you talk about with IT, because they just want to run the entire nasty process of email signature management more streamlined and smooth. Yeah? Or it could be a topic that's addressed with marketing because they want to use the targeting campaign functionalities to use email as a vehicle for their outbound marketing. Yeah? Another use case could be what we call access and distribution. So the ability to bring all the beautiful assets that you have, templates, icons, pictures, you name it, to the end user without IT involvement. This is something where, again, IT is quite interested because you take a lot of workload from the ticketing desks, or the marketing could be interested because they plan a rebrand and want to roll out all the assets smoothly, yeah, and want to be sure that when they pull the trigger, when they flip the switch for the rebrand, that everybody uses the new CI, the new styles, has the new logo in all their documents, and you don't get that mishmash of documents, historic and new ones, that actually devaluate your new brand approach. Yeah. So we try to establish those horizontal use cases. Now, as I already saw, there are multiple different stakeholders and different divisions, teams that are recipients for that message. But then we also have the ability to talk about certain what we call vertical use cases. So in a large audit firm or in a large consultancy, you will definitely have teams that do nothing else but produce presentations. Yeah. Yes. So, or you have teams that produce complex proposals. Yeah. If you pitch for an investment project in a bank, if you pitch for a consultancy mandate with a large international business, then you have 20, 30, 50 people that build those complex documents. And here we go in and identify the stakeholders and help them with automating the production of those documents by either just helping them to produce those documents within, let's say, an office environment faster, or by helping them to actually also get data from all the various sources, from the CRM, from the marketing automation tool, from maybe a calculation tool whatsoever, and streamline these data, these assets all into one document and produce the perfect proposal, if you will, that is on brand, is in compliance with the latest legal disclaimer, has the right terms in it, has the right financial data, and this without you picking up the phone asking someone in legal, hey, is my disclaimer still right? What's the name of our MD? Stuff like that. Yeah. So Understood. Things that everybody sees on a daily basis. So ring fence the account, find multiple angles of approach, talk to different stakeholders, and establish rapport for the various use cases you can put forward. That's at least our approach.
Now you have, you said in the beginning, you have 6 sales reps and 10 BDRs. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse maybe that you are able to like tackle almost all industries and really a lot of different stakeholders as far as I understood up to now. How did you structure it in practice with your sales reps and BDRs? Like, for example, does one person have like one industry and one use case, or do they switch? How do you do it?
So the beauty of a scale-up is that you still test and try. So I wouldn't say that we are at the end of the road and have found the wisdom that will make us ultimately successful. But definitely one thing this will shine through every time we talk about this is focus creates results. Yeah. So what we've done is, first of all, we have structured the sales team in a way that we have what we call account executives and enterprise account executives who target different groups of businesses. So the enterprise account executives target the MDAX, DAX companies, international organizations with a high level of complexity, a huge bandwidth and variety of stakeholders, where you also need to understand the business much better and also have that long-term view to close business there. Yeah? And those enterprise account executives work on a list of accounts, on a book of business, yeah, as an established term. They focus on this book of business, which I would say holds 50 accounts, yeah, and where they then work with assigned BDRs to really penetrate those accounts, more or less one by one. Yeah. Pick an account or pick a group of accounts that have similar characteristics. So you could, I don't know, put a bracket around them by vertical. You could put a bracket around them by use case. Yeah? So different ways to structure that, and then run a BDR campaign. Potentially, if you're lucky, add some PR, get a really nice multi-channel approach in place, and do ABM, but not necessarily ABM 1-to-1, but 1-to-few. So against that group of accounts. Yeah? That's the approach in the larger account business. When we talk about our account executives, they work against an account pool. Yeah? So they are free to choose a set of accounts that they then, in a rotational approach, work with another part of the BDR organization. And this is something where we sit and discuss and refine all the time, where we look into what are trends in the market. So, for example, last year it was enormous what came up in terms of demand for email signature management. It's, in a way, it's a bread and butter business, but it's nice. It's a nice entry point in an organization. You get your technology in, you get your platform in, and then you can build all those vertical use cases with a customer that already knows you, where you've passed all the gates already in IT, InfoSec, and whatever. Yeah. So it's much easier to upsell when you have established that platform, even if it's a tool. Yeah, it's not really a strategic product, but it still helps you to enter the door.
Yeah? You're in there at least. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or what we also see is that when you compare different markets in the US, legal tech is much more sophisticated than in Europe or even in APAC. So we still focus on a lot of mid-sized law firms because we can help them massively to improve their contract creation processes. Yeah, right now they work with clause libraries, they work with legal document management, they work with a lot of macros in Word to create a contract. And as there's no, let's say, compliance check, as there's no way to enforce certain standards and limit the, let's say, the availability of clauses or terms or whatsoever within your workspace, it's usually left to the partners, which, I don't know, charge 300 euros an hour or more to create those contracts. Yeah? We help them to automate the process and hand this over to paralegals or assistants, which are less expensive, so the partners can do the important work, but still are sure that the contracts that they want to send out for an M&A or an employment contract, so a different level of complexity, are still up to the standards, are formatted the right way. And believe me, lawyers and law firms put a lot of effort into formatting documents the right way. The way they play with styles and everything, it's amazing. Yeah? They need to be able to cater to that and to make it easier than before. And this is something we definitely do. So we run campaigns for law firms, for example, which are quite successful. We wouldn't do this in the US because there are specific legal tech providers which are more sophisticated and cater better to the needs. But we are the right platform to digitize, let's say, European law firms, and we see a lot of success with that.
Can we dive into this example, law firms, and can you walk us a little bit through how your sales motion there looks like. The more practical examples, the better.
Okay, so I don't mention any names, but
No, of
I mean,
course.
this is I would say law firms are amongst the best examples of reference selling or selling with familiarity. Yeah, so our BDRs typically approach a law firm with at least 3 similar examples on their mind in their suitcase, and start with telling stories about what we have achieved with those law firms that we already serve, and with this try to establish rapport and trust in our prospect. Often it's really a cold call. Templafy is not a household brand yet, so people don't know about us, albeit we do a lot with PR campaigns and podcasts and other means of creating interest and awareness. Still, not everybody knows us, so we need to build that trust. We need to earn that trust right from the onset, and in software sales, it's still relevant references. So if I approach a law firm with 500 partners, I'll try to provide at least 3 names, 3 examples of how we have re-energized, how we have improved, how we have provided business impact to a similar law firm. Yeah, there are also magic circle firms that we have served to. This is what I would bring forward if I talk to a large law firm. But for me, it's always important, as everybody in the team is doing this, to bring forward relevant references, to tell stories, how we solve problems, not to dive into functional discussions. Yeah, and with that, we normally get enough interest to book meetings with not just one stakeholder, but with 2, 3 technical contacts, maybe a business developer in a law firm, which are the people that actually write documents and stuff like that. Yeah, and then if that works well, we get 1 or 2 partners, find out who actually holds the investments, decides about investments, and push the process forward.
How do you book that meeting? I mean, I understood what kind of content you provide now, but it's like, what kind of channels do you use? How do you engage with those people?
Honestly, it's outbound calling. Yeah, so we do a lot of research. We have a small research team that just goes through all the publicly available databases, looks into, let's say, the German Legal Tech Association, into their membership, finds out about all the different members. Then there's the UV list that gives you insight into what law firms actually exist on this planet and in this country. And then you go through the rather painful exercise to identify contacts, which is not easy in Germany because we're naturally reluctant to share contact details. Plus GDPR for a couple of years now completely makes it impossible to buy any lists of contacts. Yeah, and then we try to push content into relevant portals to instill some downloads from there, get some more email addresses. So it's really bottom-up campaign building. So there's no magic sauce. It's just a lot of hard work. But as always, this eventually leads to results.
Cold calling is not dead, huh?
Will never be, I fear. I'm not a big fan of it, but I haven't found a replacement yet. So I mean, we also experiment with video-based prospecting. We definitely do a lot in ABM, one-to-few campaigns. So we do this currently for law firms as well as for the AEC sector, architecture, engineering, construction, because there's also a segment that grows very much in demand. So yeah, but besides finding partners that refer you, besides building a trusted name in the industry that generates inbounds, outbound calling, outbound email campaigns, still, yeah, the way to go. And I need to keep my BDRs busy.
yeah, of course. We have some viewers that somehow are hesitating when it comes to cold calling and don't know how to approach it. Like if you would advise someone with this company that would say, okay, I would like to try it out, I would like to start this. Of course, you have to have the right content. Let's assume that person has the right content. How would you start? And we assume that the person has the right contact details. Yeah, so you don't have to research all the stuff.
Makes it easier.
Yeah, exactly. So what would be the next steps?
So I'm not the manager for the BDR team, so the really nitty-gritty details would be someone else's job to share. But what I expect is a solid preparation to really understand the account. So even if we talk about cold calling, I'm into a balanced mixture of quality and quantity. Yeah. So it's not like you need to have a team where everybody does 100 calls a day. Then you run a call center and then you try to sell something on the phone. It doesn't work. Yeah? You burn a lot of trust with the initial call. So you have to be prepared. You have to have a message, and that's why I was talking about relevant references, about stories. You have to bring something to the table in that initial discussion. You have to create interest and awareness. Yeah? Just to give you an example from a different industry, but that illuminates quite nicely how it works quite well. So we, for a while, struggled to get interest in high schools, being it public or private high schools, but still they produce a lot of documents. It's definitely part of their processes, and it's a pain to see what they sometimes put out, because it's not on brand, it's crappily designed. I would never tell them that, but it's a fact. Yeah, but we never really got access to a lot of these high schools until we recently won a large high school in Switzerland. Yeah, and my BDRs now just use this name. They call up all the other business schools and high schools, and the same ones that pushed back or didn't even respond for the last 6 months, after having heard, hey, we work with university, blah, blah. Would you like to learn more? Book a meeting. It works. It's not the only thing that works, but relevant references, good stories about the impact you had for a given customer in the same industry of the same size, potentially in the same region, still helps to open doors. Yeah. Or the classical ones we have now done, as we're repositioning the company as content enablement platform, not so much as productivity tool anymore, because there's a huge set of small competitors, and we need to leverage our game here. Over the course of that, we worked on, let me rethink what I wanted to express here. Sorry, completely lost the thread here. So it will come back. But...
No worries. No worries. No, but well, I can summarize maybe what I learned already, and that's really interesting. So it's not like magic to do cold calling. It's like you have to structure basically the companies in certain buckets so that you have references for each bucket. You have to have something of value that you bring up pretty fast. I mean, of course, you have to. I would assume, and please tell me if I'm wrong, I would assume that you test the script a little bit. So which information do you give first and to get the interest in a cold call, because otherwise people just say, I don't have time, sorry, bye. But besides that, it doesn't sound like rocket science.
It is no rocket science. I mean, sales is never rocket science. Otherwise, there would be too few people who could do it. Although we still struggle to find enough talent. But coming back to what I want to say, so in the context of that content enablement category building that we're currently executing, we ran a market survey about business enablement. So what is the average number of tools that businesses use? What's the typical problem that people face using with that stack of technology? Does it really enable them in the current working situation to achieve their results? And this report, which is I think a 6-8 pager, this is now really a door opener in a lot of course, because we can tell businesses that think about going more digital, going hybrid, going remote themselves, hey, we have collated results from a survey with 1,500 stakeholders, and there are some interesting findings. And you drop 1 or 2, like 60% of the people in the business think they have too many different applications that they have to use for their business processes that are disconnected, and they would really benefit from having a more integrated approach. If you share 1 or 2 of these tidbits, then people get really interested to get that report. And if you address, let's say, a head of digital workplace with that also, you get a meeting. So relevant content, relevant references, no rocket science. But not just push for, I'm a nice guy, I want to have a meeting with you. Doesn't work so well.
I want to say something to you. not a good idea. Not a good idea. Yeah.
Agreed.
Very good. So in the end, providing value is always something that works, and thinking about it in buckets where you put your big target group into these segments. And then you have to do the work. I mean, not every segment needs the same type of information. That increases your rate of success. Awesome.
Nicely summarized.
So, what is happening once you book the meeting? Then the BDR, which is the business development rep, hands over the meeting to the account executive, and the account executive takes the call and does this demo.
Yeah, that's the way how to ruin your opportunity and pipeline. So
No, that's why I'm asking like
yeah.
this. How do you do it?
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for the provocative question. No, definitely. I mean, this is the easy way to do, and this is the way how a lot of reps in scale-ups and startups are trained. They get a lot of exposure to the product, learn about all the beautiful product features, and then they hide behind the product, but because they never learn to how discover pain in their customer, in their prospect. And that's actually the step that has to follow the booking of the meeting. Ideally, that BDR will qualify some initial pain. Yeah, we don't, in a 15 minutes call, you don't know about the budget, the economic buyer, the expected impact, and all this beautiful stuff. That's something you have to uncover over time. But you should at least have sounded out your value proposition, found some resonance. For us in Templafy, that's super easy because everybody feels the pain that we solve. Yeah, but most of the companies we talk to initially just have that dormant pain. They have lived like this forever and a day. They have no need to change it now. But we want to scale fast. We want to sell, so we want to make them aware that there's an acute pain, not just a latent pain. Yeah, and this is the job of the sales rep then, to go into a discovery call. Yeah, potentially tease a bit with a very short targeted demo, but rather ask questions like a good doctor. Find out, is there a pain? And you have that scratch on your arm. Does it hurt? I have it for 2 weeks. Yeah, but look at it. It's really red. Doesn't it hurt a bit more? I say, and if you touch it, it burns. Yeah, and then you get into a situation where you actually make your contact aware that it's not just something that will be there and has always been there, but something that you can solve. And there's a good cure for that. And that's the job. Yeah, the job is not to lift your packages of painkillers and say, I have this beautiful package in red and white with 100 pills, and here are 50 pills in a blue package, and I also have a solution that you can just drink. What would you like? That's not, it's not how you solve a problem. That's just how you sell
like
a product.
Supermarket, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a
And
supermarket.
this step is too often missing in the sales approach and the process. Yeah. So qualify hard and qualify early, and really ask enough questions. Be curious to really understand the business and the pain. And also, as we train very much on our buying personas and their typical day in a life, what are the typical challenges they're facing in their day-to-day life, you can then ask pointed questions. And if I, for example, have someone in my sales team who was a media designer before, yeah, if that person talks to a brand owner, that's a totally different conversation. They don't talk about, hey, I'm you, I'm this, I'm that, here's my product, but they really liaise, build rapport around their work experience, the problems they're facing, and then you can nicely shift into, yeah, and now if you agree, I would like to show you how we solve this for company XYZ that has very similar challenges to you. So any kind of business that's in a rebrand, hey, would you like to see how we help Pandora to really bring their brand out nice and shiny when they did their rebrand 2 years ago, stuff like that. Yeah, and then even then you don't really dive deep into functionalities. You might have the most beautiful product in the world, but you want to sell a solution, you want to have an impact on your customer's business, and you have to prove that value. So you qualify even more. And then when you come to a point where your prospect really understands that there is hope, yeah, the scratch will go away, then you pull out your Band-Aid.
They have the pain. Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly. First, they understand, oh, it really hurts, and then you can basically, as you
exactly.
said.
And then otherwise, also, if you talk about value-based selling, I mean, if it's only a small pain, it's a simple Band-Aid that it will apply. But if you manage credibly and with justification to prove that there's some dormant problem that might become really nasty over time, and then you provide a cure that is potentially a bit more expensive, takes a bit longer, but solves the problem, then at the root, you're in a much better position than you are the trusted advisor, to use that term as well. Yeah. And then, of course, you'll follow up with demos, because at the end of the day, you sell a product. It's as you sell a subscription. You want to establish implement that solution and then let it run for a couple of years to have your return of investment. That requires some deep dives, and that requires to bring in some other people from your sales org and supporting org, of course. Yeah, but yes. Initially qualify hard and take time to do this properly. Not just dive into the product demo. Don't hide behind the product.
Very good. Another question, because you have a quite sizable team. How do you leverage the learnings that this team creates? Because I assume, I mean, you have different kinds of people, and they, even though you have a process, somehow they learn different things. How do you do that in practice?
So first of all, that's intentional. Yeah, I after having worked several years abroad, I really learned about the value of diversity in a team, not just in that kind of how we articulate nowadays. Everyone wants to be supporting diversity and so forth, but having people with different experience, different backgrounds, and potentially even different skill sets that still match the requirements of a sales rep brings a lot of value. Yeah, so not to manage a clone army or clones of yourself, but a really diverse team with deviating talents, and creating a collaborative spirit helps you to really leverage another level of power there. So I'm fortunate that this really worked well for me, and that I have people who support each other. Yeah, so I've maybe it's also because we run very thorough assessments with our teams, so we know about their motivations and drivers and their personality setup. And you have sometimes very data-driven, very detail-driven people that are the right match for analytical buyers. Yeah, and you might also have some very people-orientated, emotional sellers, that cut corners in order to achieve a goal, and they work better with the amiable, expressive characters in the buying organization. And sometimes you have to mix and match that. So, and that's the beauty of a situation where when people are aware of that diversity and use this also for their collaboration, and you actually support this and bring this forward, then you have a really good strike team that brings much better results than if you try with some kind of formalized training to instill and create the same behavior in everyone. Yeah, so it's on one side fairly coaching, but on the other side also just always supporting and empowering collaboration. That helps a great deal. And then, of course, you have seniority, more experience with your product and so forth. This is something where I believe you have to flank, especially your new reps, with more seasoned pre-sales solution consultants in order to get that team approach on that level as well. I mean, in a fast-growing organization, you hire a lot of people, want to onboard them as soon as possible. The classical way is to push as much knowledge into them with formal trainings as possible, which doesn't work. You need to get them on the job as soon as possible, but they will not know enough about your solution. So let them work out their sales capabilities. You hired them because they can sell. You didn't hire them in our case because they know Templafy. Nobody knows Templafy before I hire them. Yeah, but you let them sell, but you flank them with someone who brings in the solution knowledge, who has already run several of those pain discoveries. And then they work as a team. Yeah, and this again creates so much better results, if you will, that actually it's great to have that diversity in your team. Yeah. Does
so
that clarify, or was that more confusing?
No, it's clarifying, definitely.
Right.
So if I would summarize it, it would be learning by osmosis. So you put people together in pods or teams, and they learn from each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's I've sold learning management solutions for a couple of years, and there's this established model of 10, 20, 70. If you look into how knowledge is actually acquired by an individual, then you see that over time, only 10% of the knowledge comes from formal trainings. Yeah, whatever shape and form they have, whether it's classroom, whether it's 60 minutes online trainings, or bite-sized chunks of knowledge, still only 10% of that knowledge transfer into the minds and hearts, if you will. 20% come from shadowing, from training on the job, from joining others and working with them. And the rest, the 70% that really stick at the end of the day, is practice. Do it yourself. Yeah. So to give people the basics, that they understand what we're doing, but then let them work together, work on their own business, their own opportunities as soon as possible with seasoned people that complement them in their skill set, makes people far more successful than running certifications, lengthy trainings and retrainings to just bore people to death.
Yeah, awesome. That is really helpful. So it's really interesting because you have a lot of salespeople, you're really successful, and you are in a growing market environment right now. I'm really curious to know what is like the biggest learning you had in the last year when it comes to sales.
Yes, so I think that's what I tried to express already when we just talk about sales. It's understand your buyer, be curious, ask the right questions, be willing to learn from your buyer, and then only then talk about your solution. So make it easy to buy in a way. Yeah? Let your buyer come out of the reserve, explain their problem. And if you have understood the problem, and also, to be honest, if you are sure that you can solve the problem, then articulate your value proposition, not just go out with some random messaging and try to attract as many people as possible. You will end up with low probability, low value opportunities en masse, but you will not close much of that. Yeah? Focus on a few large opportunities. I've seen this in every business I've worked for now for the last 10 years. So being it large talent management providers, small recruiting or engagement providers on our Templafy as content enablement platform, in B2B sales, it always works the same way. Yeah? Understand the pain, and people that have that natural curiosity really dive deep into the customer's pain and come up with a really well thought through solution, yeah, within the constraints of a SaaS platform, of course. Yeah, we don't customize software, we don't provide individual solutions, so we need to still manage the situation that the customer thinks their problems are unique, and we come up with a standard solution that should cover this. So we need to also provide that educational part here, but again, with references and with a solid understanding of the pain that we already solved, this is entirely possible. But that part is where you see people become really successful and where you see sales organizations pick up speed. And most of the companies I've worked for have started as product companies. So they create a beautiful product. It's in a way easy to sell because initially you sell it to innovators and early adopters in the market, and they get the value. They just need to see the features to derive from that, hey, that's my potential value, and they take the risk to implement this tool. Yeah, but this is only, if you follow the technology adoption cycle, 16% of the market. If you want to tackle the mass market, if you want to go for the early majority, the pragmatist buyers, then they are not able to do that translation anymore. You can't put forward features and they see the value. You have to put the value forward, and to articulate that value, you need to understand what business problem you solve for them. And that's the massive change that you need to be able to undertake when you enter the mass market. And this is where I see very successful businesses that have made that transition. Templafy is definitely one of those. And you see a lot of scale-ups or startups that hit the 1 million ARR threshold and then fell into that chasm because they did not understand that change of buyer's behavior, yeah, which is all about solution selling to the pragmatist buyer, to the early majority, whilst feature selling still works for all the innovators and early adopters. They get the value proposition themselves. So successful,
awesome.
Successful sales in a very small startup has to massively change when they hit that, let's say, chasm. Yeah, hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Understand your buyer and talk the language, and like express what you can do for them in their own words. Very likely is what.
You also sometimes be a challenger. So that's also characteristics of at least sellers that work with solutions that have a certain level of complexity. So if you can span a broader range of configurations of use cases whatsoever, it makes sense to really look at your customer and look at the pain that's to solve, the problem that's to solve, and think about, I mean, there are two dimensions. Do I solve the problem right? But also take a step back and think about, do I solve the right problem? Yeah. And sometimes it's that you work on the wrong problem because your buyer is too close to the problem, and you, with your experience from far more projects of the same kind, incredibly stand up and tell him, hey, it's okay, we can do it this way, but come with me, take the wider view and think about whether we could approach the entire situation a slightly different way, gain much more efficiency, much better results, higher impact from this approach. And then you're truly selling SaaS. Yeah? And you really establish a long-term relationship with your customer and create a relationship that's also very impactful for the customer. So you have reference, you have upsell potential, and so forth. Yeah? So from that perspective, I'm a big fan of the challenger methodology when we talk about sales methodologies, and also about the approach to really understand your customer's business. Yeah, which doesn't mean you have to be an expert in a vertical, but you have to do some proper research. You have to understand the processes where you have an impact on and talk credibly to those.
Awesome. Unfortunately, Michael, we are already almost at the end of our time, so I have to go with our I could ask many more questions. Really insightful, but let's go to our 5 rapid fire questions now.
All right.
you have a super hardcore job as head of sales of a fast growing company in the German region. What do you do to keep body and mind fit and sharp?
I have to do more. So currently I read a lot, not only business literature, but also sometimes just convenient stuff. I walk and I play with my sons. I have twins that are 5-year-old. They keep me on my toes. That's better than any kind of exercise. And actually between my job and the family, there's not much time left for other things.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a business book that you like?
Yeah, definitely. I already quoted it a bit when I spoke about the technology adoption cycle. And this is Crossing the Chasm by Jeff Moore. Mm-hmm. It's not the most recent book, but it lays the foundation for a lot of businesses.
Mm-hmm. Is there a business leader that you follow?
The one guy that impressed me most is Jeff Weiner from LinkedIn. He's now chairman. He was CEO prior to the acquisition by Microsoft. He really created a coherent culture and created a company that's there to stay and still grows massively. So what he has done in terms of establishing culture, a set of values, a mission, it's just outstanding. And to learn from him is a great pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Who should be our next podcast guest and why?
To give benefit to me or to your listeners?
To the audience. Yeah, sales and marketing is the topic.
If I could bring Dave Carnegie out of his grave, I would really love to listen to him. He's the founder of any kind of modern sales. So,
me too.
No, sorry, no really good answer here. Sorry for that.
No problem, no problem. And now you can directly address our audience. Anything we can help you with?
If someone here in the audience knows exceptional sales talent, please refer them to me. That would be great. So. And anyway, exchange about sales topics is always appreciated. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that.
How can people get in touch with you?
Best way would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. My profile is up to date. Contact details are there. Michael Lazik. I think there's only one Michael Lazik on LinkedIn, so it's fairly easy. If you then combine it with Berlin, you find me.
Yeah, we also put it into the show notes, and your last name is like Lazik. So Michael Lazik, everybody will find you. That's it. Thank you so much, Michael. It was a pleasure to have you on our show.
It was fun. Thanks for having me and looking forward to potentially future engagements. It was fun.
Thanks.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.